We want to make sure that there's a broad public support for protecting wildlife and broad public support for fighting climate change. We do this work as the lawyers for the environmental movement. Basically, we're an organization with 10 offices around the country, headquartered in Northern California. We have 65 lawyers who bring cases, the most important environmental cases around the country. We're arguing a case in the Supreme Court this coming Monday, for example, on protecting clean water and aquatic species that's got national implications. But we work a lot on the wildlife and climate change issues that are the feature of this exhibit. In the wildlife sense, for example, if you look around, the American pika over here to my right and the wolverine to my left, which is in the northern Rockies, those are two species that currently do not have the protection of the Federal Endangered Species Act. And we have legal cases going on to try to force the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to give them the protection of putting them on the endangered species list. The grizzly bear has long been on the endangered species list, and it has had the protection, the full protection of federal law, and grizzly bear populations have been rebuilding in Yellowstone National Park and in the surrounding national forest and wilderness areas of the northern Rockies. But the government has now taken the grizzly bear off of the endangered species list, and so we're in court to try to force them to keep it on the list because the population is not viable yet. And it's not viable yet because of climate change. The grizzly bear feeds in cold winters on the nuts from a particular type of mountain pine that grows at high elevations in the Rockies. Because of climate change, it's gotten warmer, the summers are longer, the growing season is longer for a pine bark beetle that destroys those trees. So when not long ago, the winter was cold enough that those beetles only had time for one life cycle per summer, and their population stayed manageable, and the forest thrived, and the grizzly bear population was recovering. Just a few degrees change in the average temperature has enabled those beetles to now go through 2 life cycles in the summer. And that means exponential growth and rapid exponential growth in the beetle population. And now you have tens of thousands of square miles of forest wiped out, and grizzly bears having no food in the wintertime. Our work is, in addition to these kinds of cases to protect wildlife, is aimed right at the causes of climate change too. We're bringing cases against building new coal-burning power plants, because those are the worst thing we can do today for the climate. We're bringing cases to help stimulate the growth of wind and solar energy instead, and to force more efficient appliances so that we don't need as many new power plants, and to force the federal government to start regulating and reducing the greenhouse gas emissions that are driving climate change. So, as I mentioned, we do this work around the country. We represent several hundred environmental groups, public health groups, Native American tribes, and others. If those of you who support some of the national or regional environmental groups that occasionally go to court to do their work, we are probably their lawyers. You may or may not know that, but we are probably their lawyers. Almost any group that you could name. And we do that work without charge. We don't charge those clients because we want to be able to work with them to choose what are the most important cases to bring, when and where should they be brought, and which are the most effective groups to actually be bringing the case. And we don't want to have those choices dictated by what group could pay for the legal services. We want to represent the environment and work with the right groups to get their goals accomplished.